there is a feeling you have been carrying for years. You know the one. It shows up at 2 a.m. when everything is quiet. It sits in your chest during conversations you smile through. It follows you into new relationships, new jobs, new cities. And no matter how much you achieve, how much you change, how much you try to think your way out of it, it is still there. What if the problem is not that you haven't found the right solution yet? What if the problem is that you've been trying to solve it with the same mind that created it? That is the central provocation of Letting Go by David Hawkins. And by the end of this video, you will understand why most of what you've been taught about handling difficult emotions is not just ineffective, it is actively making things worse. Stay with me. Because there is one idea in this book so simple it almost sounds stupid, and it completely changed how I understand my own emotional life. David Hawkins was a psychiatrist. Not a life coach, not a guru, not someone selling weekend retreats. He spent decades in clinical practice before writing this book, and that background matters, because Letting Go reads less like a spiritual manifesto and more like a field report from someone who watched thousands of people struggle with the same thing. The book was first published in 2012, though Hawkins spent the preceding decades developing the ideas inside it. It has since sold millions of copies, quietly, without the kind of Oprah endorsement or celebrity co-sign that launched books like The Power of Now into the mainstream. It spread the way the best ideas spread. Person to person. Because it worked. So what is the actual argument? Hawkins starts with something most of us already know but have never fully sat with. Every human being has a set of core emotional patterns. Fear. Grief. Shame. Anger. Pride. These emotions don't just visit us occasionally, they form the lens through which we interpret everything that happens to us. And here is the key insight. Most of us never actually feel these emotions. We suppress them, express them, or escape them. And all three of those responses, suppression, expression, escape, keep the emotion alive inside us. They do not release it. Think about suppression first. You feel something uncomfortable, anxiety before a meeting, sadness after a conversation, and you push it down. You tell yourself to be rational. You distract yourself with your phone, with work, with food, with anything. The feeling goes underground. But it does not go away. It accumulates. Hawkins describes this accumulation as an enormous amount of compressed energy sitting inside the body. Energy that has nowhere to go. And over time, this compressed emotional energy begins to run the show, driving decisions, creating physical tension, generating the low-level dread that many people simply call their personality. Now think about expression. The opposite approach. You let it out. You vent. You rage. You cry. And there is something genuinely useful about expression, it is better than pure suppression. But Hawkins makes a distinction that I think is one of the most important ideas in the entire book. Expression is not the same as release. When you vent anger, you are not releasing it, you are rehearsing it. You are strengthening the neural pathways associated with that emotion. You are feeding it. This is why people who pride themselves on always expressing their feelings can still carry the same emotional wounds for decades. So if suppression keeps emotion down and expression feeds it, what actually works? This is where Hawkins introduces what he calls the mechanism of surrender. And I want to be precise about what he means by this word, because surrender sounds like giving up, and it is the opposite of giving up. Surrendering, in Hawkins' framework, means allowing yourself to fully feel an emotion without doing anything about it. Without judging it. Without trying to change it. Without telling a story about why you feel it or what it means about you. Just feeling it. Completely. In the body. where it actually lives. He describes the process in almost mechanical terms. You notice the feeling. You locate it physically. Is it in your chest, your throat, your stomach? You stop resisting its presence. You let it be there. And as you do that, as you stop fighting it, something shifts. The emotion, which felt enormous and permanent, begins to move. To change. To lose its grip. This sounds almost too simple to be true. And I understand that reaction. But consider what the research says. Modern trauma therapy, particularly approaches like somatic experiencing, developed by Peter Levine and EMDR, is built on a nearly identical premise. That trauma and difficult emotion are stored as physical sensation in the body. That the path through is not cognitive analysis but body-based awareness and completion of the emotional cycle. That what we resist persists, and what we allow to move through us, moves through. Hawkins arrived at this framework through clinical observation decades before it became mainstream in trauma research. That is worth paying attention to. Now let me tell you about the map of consciousness, because it is the most controversial part of the book, and I want to be honest with you about it. Hawkins developed what he called a scale of consciousness, running from 0 to 1,000. At the bottom sit emotions like shame, guilt, apathy, grief. In the middle, anger, pride, courage. Higher up, acceptance, reason, love. At the top, enlightenment. He claimed to be able to measure where any person, book, or idea sits on this scale using a technique called applied kinesiology, muscle testing. He claimed the scale was calibrated scientifically. Here is where I push back. Applied kinesiology has no credible scientific foundation. The claims Hawkins made about his scale are not empirically verifiable. And some of the numbers he assigns to historical figures and philosophical traditions are frankly bizarre. If you approach this section of the book looking for scientific rigor, you will be frustrated. And rightly so. But here is what I think is worth salvaging. The underlying emotional hierarchy, the idea that shame and guilt are more corrosive to human functioning than anger, that anger is more functional than apathy, that acceptance is a higher operating state than pride, that sequence maps reasonably well onto what we actually see in psychology. The ladder is a useful map even if the GPS coordinates are made up. Take the framework. Leave the pseudoscience. Because the core practice, the mechanism of surrender, does not need the map of consciousness to be valid. It stands on its own. And the reports of people who have applied it consistently are hard to dismiss. Here is how Hawkins suggests you actually do this in daily life. When a difficult feeling arises, and it will arise, probably within the next few hours, instead of immediately reacting to it or pushing it away, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, where do I feel this in my body right now? Not why do I feel it? Not what does it mean? Just, where is it? Then let your attention rest there. Not to fix it. Not to analyze it. Just to be with it. Like you would sit with a friend who is in pain, not trying to solve them, just present with them. Hawkins says that most emotions, when you actually allow them to be felt fully, last between 30 seconds and a few minutes before they begin to shift. The suffering comes not from the emotion itself but from our resistance to experiencing it. I have tested this enough times in my own life to say, there is something real here. Not always easy. Not always dramatic. But real. Here is my overall read on letting go. The core mechanism is sound and it maps onto what modern somatic and trauma research is independently arriving at from a completely different direction. The practice is accessible, you do not need to meditate for 20 years to use it. You can try it today, in the next difficult moment you encounter. The map of consciousness is the weakest part of the book. If it resonates with you, use it as a loose framework. If it puts you off, skip those chapters. The book does not depend on them. What Hawkins got right, fundamentally, is this: you are not your emotions. You are the awareness in which emotions arise. And that awareness, the part of you that can observe a feeling without becoming it, is always already free. That is not a spiritual claim. That is a description of a capacity every human being actually has. And most of us never use it. The next book I am going to cover takes this idea in a completely unexpected direction, into the neuroscience of habit and why emotional patterns are so much harder to break than we think, and what actually works to change them. If you want to follow along as I work through the shelf, subscribing is the simplest way to do that. There is also a link in the description to the book itself if you want to read it alongside the series. Take care of your mind. It is the only one you have got.